What is up, ladies and gentlemen, YouTube? That's right, I'm Chris Smith, and I am about to review Colony Season 1, Episode 2. Now, please, if you just clicked on the video, stick to the end. I may actually have something good to say, just aside from there. But let's talk about this right here. So, basically, plot of this episode is pretty much takes place a couple of days after the pilot episode, where Will is now going to his first assignment from the occupation, and it is to find pretty much a Gerardo bomber, and there is our basic plot. Now, what I liked about this episode, which I thought was a pretty good episode, it stayed its course, but then there's a couple of negatives here, where I was just like, okay. So for me personally, I enjoyed seeing Will in the field because you hear that he's kind of was like this badass resistance fighter, this FBI guy. He had so many like occupations, and now working for the occupation, I was willing to see how he actually kind of operated in the field. And I feel like it didn't really disappoint too much because he didn't do too much, but from what we saw, you clearly see that he knew what he was doing, and I really enjoyed that pretty much. Now, also some things that I really did enjoy was that we actually got to see how the occupation actually worked, mainly because we didn't really know what they were. We knew that what they did and to other people didn't take them away, but really didn't see how they kind of operated. You kind of see it's kind of like a police force of sorts, and most of the people kind of working in the occupation really are kind of doing this up against their own will, and no pun intended. And some of these people don't want to do it, but they realize that this is the best way to survive, to keep your mouth shut and do nothing. Also, Carl Weathers is pretty much Will's partner in this, and I really enjoyed Carl Weathers because I felt like Carl Weathers and Josh Holloway had pretty good chemistry, and it felt in a couple of cases like a buddy cop movie of sorts. But come on, Apollo Creed, it's Action Jackson. Forget Apollo Creed, Action Jackson. But also, what I thought was actually real good was we get to see the drones. We got to see the drones a little bit more up close and personal. And just like Oblivion, to me, I feel like the drones are a bit of a character of sorts. They're very creepy and scary because they just are like staring at you, and apparently they just find you out of nowhere. Now, for me, Carl Weathers, also going back real quick, I feel like Carl Weathers hopefully does a little bit more because he did kind of seem he was a bit laid back, even though that's kind of like his character. Also, the Resistance, this is a bit spoilers. The Resistance pretty much gives Kate an ultimatum to leak the information that Will is doing with the occupation, to kind of get a step ahead and kind of beat them. The ultimatum is pretty much that they say or else, which is, I'm guessing, kind of threatening her family. And that's pretty much what the basic plot of this thing is everybody's trying to protect their own family, right? Okay, and I get that. And then eventually she kind of does leak the information to them, and it kind of like stops Will's bust and whatnot. And then Will kind of realizes that there is a rat in the, there isn't somebody leaking the information. And then he kind of figures 2 and 2, and that's kind of how the thing ends. But also a couple of things was that we actually got to see the factory at hand. Now we got to see, because Carlos, which is at the very beginning, gets taken, Will's friend, and Will has to kind of help his family out, and while trying to get out Carlos, and that doesn't really go the same way. So Carlos eventually goes to the factory, and then we kind of see the factory. It's kind of like a concentration camp because they kind of strip them down, and then somehow it looks like they brainwashed them or whatever because they kind of are dressed in like scrubs, like doctors or whatever. Who knows? But yeah, who knows where that could really go? But it was good to see kind of like the factory play at hand. Also, some negatives in this thing was that I feel like they didn't really do. I feel like they need to kind of explain more. Or maybe it's just me how this society kind of works, because I feel like we see the concept, but I feel like they're not really breaking it down too much. Because you see these high class people, I thought it was kind of like a bit of a post-apocalyptic thing, but you have so many kind of people working there, and the rich and the poor, whatever. I would like to know how some of these things actually kind of work, but hopefully they kind of do a better job in the future doing it. Also, I feel as if there were some cases where it felt like it was just 24 and some things, and because the lady kind of says, there's a lady that talks to Will, right? And she says, it's like everybody forgot about the arrival, and unfortunately, that's also one of the problems. You kind of forget that the aliens are kind of the whole plot of it, because it just seemed like it was a basic thing. I almost forgot it was a sci-fi show a couple of times in this episode. But yeah, and also they need to be very careful. I feel like with Kate kind of working on both sides, with working with Will, and then they kind of playing occupation, and then she's trying to play the Resistance, and then that can be very deadly, and then things can just go too hectic to the point where it gets too convoluted, and then they kind of fall in the ass. Once again, like I said in the pilot episode, just like if they do for Lost. Don't get too complicated. Stay on a narrow path, and I think we'll do fine. But just explain what the society really does, because I feel like they haven't done it. But that's my review of episode 2. Comment, subscribe, and like. Hopefully you stay to the end, but subscribe. Please, help me out. I'm busting my ass. Sign out.